Sure. At CARECEN, we have always seen children who come across the border to reunify with their families, come through our doors seeking legal advice, representation, counseling, processing support, family support, mental health, and a whole range of services that children and families need to have a healthy integration into U.S. society. And prior to the humanitarian crisis that's become public in the United States, we were seeing on average 5 to 6 children a week who were unaccompanied or who came with adults seeking some type of relief. And in the last few months, starting in end of June to date, that number has gone up to 20 children a week. So we've seen an increase from 20 cases a month to 80 cases in just the recent months. Out of 10 children, 4 of the children that we're talking about are children who've been released from detention centers in the U.S. and reunified to family members in the Bay Area. The other 6 children are children who are not on the radar of the public discourse. They're children who made it across the border either alone with other children, or they're children who came to the United States with family members, either their parents or extended family. Those children also are seeking the same services. They're seeking legal relief, and our office is honestly, we're committed. We're going to work until we have to, but we're pretty taxed. Some of the stories that we're seeing, one case was a parent who hadn't seen his daughter since she was about a year old. He came to the United States so he could provide for his family. The child's mother passed away in El Salvador, and this man got a call. Essentially, he did not know that his child was on the journey. She was escaping sexual abuse by extended family members. She sought protection from the national governments, from the police, and they told her that unless there was an emergency, they couldn't help her. This is a child, a 12-year-old, literally going to the police department seeking protection, which she was not given. So she decided to make the journey with other kids that she heard were making the journey to reunify with their families in the U.S. She wanted to meet her father. She got detained at the border and sent to a Chicago detention center where a social worker, a worker from Office of Refugee Resettlement, called the father to say, "We have your daughter here in Chicago. She's coming to the Bay Area tomorrow." Fortunately, thanks to Univision and all the media coverage that our organization has been getting, this father knew that he could get support from CARECEN. He came to our office literally the same day he picked up his child. She still had dirt on her shoes from crossing the border. She was wearing the very same outfit that she had worn on her journey north. And for the first time, this father, we would think that the child was the one, you know, when you hear the story, you think of the child first. And what we saw was a father who was breaking down right before our eyes through the process of interviewing the child so we could help build her case. We were asking questions that he would have never thought of asking. Asking questions about how she came to the United States, if she had suffered harm on the journey, what had happened to her during detention, how had they treated her, what was the situation that she was fleeing in her home country. And so if you can imagine a parent having to not only meet his child for the first time, but to find out that all this has happened to his child in his absence, when he was absent to provide protection for her, and instead this child was in harm, was experiencing harm. We have other cases of a boy, Freddie, who's 12 years old, who organized kids in his neighborhood who also wanted to see his mom. Against his mom's advice, he made the journey north. He got across the border, and so he's the child that made it across who somehow found his way to our organization. And when you hear this child talk about the void that he had in his heart, this emptiness, el deseo que tenía de estar con su mamá, de conocerla, the longing that he had to meet his mother, to be with her, and to have the opportunity to love her. The mother had discouraged him from making the journey because she felt it was dangerous. She was afraid for him, but he decided to do it anyway. He was fortunate he made it to the Bay Area. He is now reunified with his parents, and his mom couldn't be prouder of him for actually speaking publicly about his story. We were at a community rally where he decided to share his story because he heard what we were talking about, and he felt compelled to say that he came here seeking reunification. We know that children are escaping violence, they're escaping poverty and absolute lack of hope for a future in their countries. They're escaping violations to their basic rights and the government's inability to provide protection to them. And many kids are, again, seeking family reunification.
What kind of support do you need?
CARECEN is committed to this work. We were born as a result of migration, forced migration from the region. We have continued for the last 28 years to work along community members, members of our countries that are fleeing their countries due to poverty, violence, military dictatorships, and so on. We need our community and our allies to make a call to Washington, D.C., to make calls to our local legislators, to highlight that children are welcome, children deserve protection because all children are sacred. And we're asking people to ask for the government to not only extend protection, but to guarantee the long-term social integration of these children and their families. We do not believe in further militarization, so we think that the U.S. needs to think hard and long on how they would make investments that could lead to really good outcomes in the region in terms of economic opportunities, which we haven't seen thus far. So we're also asking people to not only think of what's happening at the domestic level in terms of the 52,000 children that we're talking about, plus all the other children and families that are not in detention centers that are also impacted by this crisis, but to think beyond U.S. borders and to think of our country as having to play a role as a good neighbor, that we are the powerful neighbor in the neighborhood, and we can provide protection, and we should, because we go to all kinds of other countries throughout the world in defense of democracy and freedom, and we should be able to provide protection to our to children who are in our bordering countries. We're asking for financial support to not only support the families, so we have a fund that we're hoping to build at CARECEN with people's donations and support to buy clothing, shoes, school supplies, and other needs that families may have as a result of their children coming unexpected. We're also asking for support to hire new attorneys that can provide legal representation to the children and file asylum cases. We're asking for financial support to hire additional social workers and mental health workers who can help not only provide the social emotional support to the families, but who can also help build the cases, because in order to have a successful asylum case, you need to have clinical evaluations, you need to gather evidence, both domestically as well as from countries of origin. So if there's police reports in the countries of origin, we need to do the homework of gathering that so we can build successful cases. We also know that 85% of children who receive representation can have successful resolution. So we feel that not providing representation is a shame. It would be a loss and a missed opportunity for children who are legitimately entitled to protection.
Anything else that you think is relevant to the audience, the Latino Community Foundation circle, community? Is there anything else you want them to?
I think that I know that one of the missions of the Latino Community Foundation is to build Latino power for the future, and that starts with our children. The children are our future, and all Latino children in this country, people are not going to discriminate on whether you're immigrant, undocumented, or not. If you're Latino, you're brown, you are going to be facing many of the same challenges and barriers to lifelong success, education, health, and all the positive outcomes that we want for our community. It takes a village to raise a child, and we know that the Latino community has a strong value of family, and we believe that children are sacred. And so we're asking for support in every way. We're asking for technical expertise support, we're asking for financial support, and we're asking for engagement. We're asking for people to take a few minutes out of their day to pick up the phone and make a call to Washington or their local representatives. We're asking people to sign petitions that are being circulated through social media and the internet. And we're asking people to take the time to go visit our organizations and learn about what we do, how we do it, and why we do it. And more importantly, to have the opportunity to meet the very families that are being impacted by this crisis. We also want to highlight that in order to achieve the true solutions, we have to address the root causes. And the root causes rest in the countries of origin. And we have to make sure that the U.S. foreign investments are investments that yield true economic opportunities, sustainable economic opportunities that are relevant to the region. Our peoples are agricultural people, so we need to invest in agricultural development in our countries. The sweatshops, the cheap labor, the CAFTA and free trade agreements haven't necessarily yielded the outcomes that we had hoped for. And so things have to change, and we have to do things differently, both within the United States as well as in the region.